Hello and welcome to Transforming Tomorrow from the Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business. I'm Paul Turner.
And I'm Professor Jan Babington. When you think about the challenges of making a business more sustainable, you might not think about family dynamics, but understanding the emotions and the generations are key to creating a sustainable family business.
Sometimes, Jan, we have to rethink things.
Oh, I think that's a very good thing to rethink things. What are we rethinking today then?
Well, we're rethinking this whole podcast and whether we should be... No, that's not today. We're going to re-look at the attitudes of family businesses towards sustainability.
That's a good idea, because it's a really complicated situation and it's a big sector, so not all family businesses are the same, so to have another chat about them would be good.
We talk quite often about the danger of putting everything from a particular sector into one envelope, or indeed a particular country, people of a particular age, and just saying, yep, they'll all have the same attitudes, the same approaches, the same ways of doing things. And maybe with family businesses, there's a danger of thinking, oh, family businesses, sustainability, there's a nice way of them connecting there. But what if that's not right?
Maybe if it's not right in every situation. So sometimes the exception to the general rule is also really fascinating to hear more about. So it sounds like a good idea. Who's going to take us through this?
Well, we've had various guests in the past who've talked to us about different family businesses. We've also had the current director of the Centre for Family Business at Lancaster University Management School, Dr. Alan Discla-Cruz, and today we're joined by one of his predecessors. We've got Professor Alfredo De Massis, who is a former director of the Centre for Family Business. He is also a professor at the University of Chieti-Pescara and IMD, and here at Lancaster University still in our Department of Entrepreneurship and Strategy. Welcome, Alfredo.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
It's really good to have you here, Alfredo. I've read in the many years we've worked together quite a lot of your research and papers all about family businesses, and so often the topic that comes back up is sustainability in various different guises in that. Before we get to that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your connection to us here in Lancaster?
Yes, I'm a professor of entrepreneurship and family business, and I basically do research, teaching, education, and advisory activities in this space, which means that I try to produce knowledge and apply this knowledge that can be helpful for entrepreneurial families to basically continue to prosper across generations. And of course, as you correctly mentioned, sustainability and everything which is closely related to that is currently a very hot topic and something very, very important and very much on the agenda, especially of the next generation.
And so could you tell us why studying family business captured your attention and your enthusiasm during your career?
Yes, thank you. I think one of the main reasons is that what happens in a family business in terms of decision-making behavior happens in a very irrational way. What I'm saying is that, the decision-making, the way they make decision, the way they take action, doesn't really follow economic rationality. And most importantly, you have a lot of emotions, because within families you have emotions, positive emotions like love, but also negative emotions like envy, hate, etc. So, it's these emotional dimensions which makes things much more complex that really captured my attention and my interest, besides the fact that I actually am the black sheep because I come from a little family business, and then I'm the one who decided to dedicate his own career to study and work with family firms rather than being my own one.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Because when we spoke to Alan is from a family business over in Honduras, and here we have Alfredo from a family business in Italy. It seems like if you don't go into the family business, you go into research in family businesses. This is it.
That's not a bad mix, but also that your understanding of other family businesses must enliven your own family's business and their understanding of what they're doing. So it's a nice synergy.
Yes, absolutely. That was, I think, very, very helpful. Also, in driving my research agenda, and also in the understanding that I could grasp some very complex phenomena within this space.
I don't know about Alfredo's family. If I was in a family where everyone else ran the business and I just went to teach about family businesses, they'd just tell me I didn't know what I was talking about, and therefore we're running the business. We're the ones who know what we're on about, not you out there being a professor. Are your family nicer than that?
Well, yeah.
So in the past, Alfredo, we've talked about family businesses being possibly at the forefront of those who are integrating sustainability into their operations. Now, what have you found in this then, in your research?
Mm-hmm. My research shows that it's very important to distinguish between the willingness of family firms to embrace sustainability and their ability. So if we look at the willingness, of course, there are a number of reasons in their mindset due to the goals that they have, the distinctive goals that they have, that leads typically family firms to be more willing to embrace sustainability. Because in the utility function of a family firm, if you look at their goals, besides the financial and economic goals, you have other goals that are family-centered, non-economic, and many of them are goals like, raising high the reputation of the family in the community where the family operates, or, really creating something that continues to generate prosperities for the next generations to, and so, all these things, of course, positively affect their attitude towards sustainability. Yet, at the same time, my research shows that sometimes they struggle more when we look at their ability, when we look at the capability of implementing really sustainability initiatives, sustainability projects. And this is mainly because sustainability is something very complex and is something that oftentimes, requires a lot of formalization if you want to really do that in a very strategic and structured way. Sometimes it requires also the availability or the predisposition of the owning family to basically leave some of their power in order to bring more openly, more widely things toward the community and things like this. And so, there is a sort of disconnect between their willingness and their ability, and sometimes this leads to them getting stuck. Getting stuck because they are not able to basically execute what they would desire.
And does company size have anything to do with this in terms of the average size of a family business versus some of the other business forms?
Yes, of course, size plays an important role even in this, let's say, sustainability challenge. Because, of course, if we consider companies that are of larger size, in this case, clearly, the availability of resources, they have more resources available. Clearly, typically, they have also a kind of culture which is different, right? If they have been growing, it means that probably they have been making the step from the small parochially led and managed family firm to a larger enterprise where you have policy, budgets, and things like this, and all this kind of, let's say, evolution has a positive effect ultimately on sustainability. So size plays a role. Let's consider, by the way, that the definition of family firm is a definition that applies to any kind of firm regardless of size. Just to recap it, for me, a family business is any business where you have a family that on the one hand has this ability, this power, this discretion to influence the vision of the business, which is needed. But at the same time, the family must also have an intention to hand over the business to the next generation. It's the second aspect that really characterizes the unique and distinctive behavior of a family firm.
You talked about size there. What about geography? I know you've researched family businesses all around the world.
Yes.
Are there any particular areas where you find that family businesses are further ahead or further behind on sustainability agendas?
I think, of course, there are institutional influences, right? I've done work on family firms, for instance, in the UK, in Europe, in China, as you said, in North America. I could say that clearly, it's, sustainability in every geography is an important topic, but of course, in some corners of the world, we know that sustainability issues are currently under scrutiny. If I think, for instance, about China or Asia, I know that there is a next generation of leaders who are now very cautious, very much worried, very much interested in learning what they can do, somehow to address an issue that is very pivotal. What I think, and I think there is evidence on that, is that of course, the legal system, the institutional system plays a role, because if you are in a more developed or less developed economy, you know also that, the type of support that you can have from the government, from the external environment varies. But I think what is more important in playing a role in shaping sustainability in family firms is the generation in control. Because there is research showing that actually the next generations, the generation of millennials, for instance, are much more sensitive to sustainability issues if we compare them, for instance, to the generation of baby boomers. And so, of course, there are some countries where, for historical reasons, you have more long-lasting, multi-generational family businesses, and other countries where, on average, family firms are quite young. They are first generation approaching the second generation. And I think there is an important role played by the generation in control of the family.
When you say the generation in control, are you meaning the person at the head of the business, or could it just be a presence of the next generation on the board generally, say, or on whatever ruling body there is for each business?
That's a very good point. I think that, both the degree of involvement of the next generation, there could be some family firms where you have a high degree of involvement of next generations, and others where you have a lower degree, right, in proportion, play a role. But I also think that besides the degree of involvement, also the type of involvement, as you correctly pointed out, plays an important role. Because one thing is having those family firms where the next generation, for instance, is strongly involved in management. Another situation is where they are involved in governance. And now we have a very contemporary phenomenon in many countries, which is where the next generation is involved only in ownership. For instance, in Italy, there was a recent study published by an old institution that collects the trans demographic studies on the countries. And they found out that many of the second generation family businesses that are transitioning to the third generations are actually currently characterized by a next generation who is willing to own the business, but not willing to manage the business. Mm-hmm. Put it differently, 34.6%, I think, of next generation members who are going to inherit a business are willing to play the role of responsible owners, but they don't want to manage as their parents did. And this is, I think, something that is going to play an important role for sustainability. Because when your ambition is the one of becoming a responsible owner, first, the word responsibility implies automatically that you have to behave in a sustainable way, first. Second, when you are not anymore involved in the day-by-day operations, in the business, daily decisions, this frees up your agenda to really work on things that, can be done, like investments in the interest of sustainability. Indeed, I believe that besides relating sustainability discussions to the businesses, when we talk about family businesses, it's also important to understand that sustainability debates and discussions also affect the patrimony, the estate of entrepreneurial families. There are important patrimonial aspects besides the firm aspect. What I mean here is that, for instance, if you speak with these families who have accumulated some wealth, some sort of patrimony, they are very much, especially the next generation, again, they're very much interested, for instance, in things like impact investing, making investments that will have an important impact. If we talk with these people, when they are not really the managers, but they are the owners, many of them will tell you that, they're very much interested in achieving social impact. Social impact is something that you can have in a structured way by setting up, for instance, a foundation, by setting up a philanthropic entity. So I think there is currently in the academic debates as well as in the practical debates, there is a kind of very hot topic which revolves around, how we as a family in business can really become a family that has a social impact, that achieves social impact. Mm-hmm. And that was not the case, I think, up to a decade ago, when mainly the sustainability discussion were related only or mainly to business, to the business and to the firms, to the organization, and didn't really affect that much the patrimony.
You mentioned a few times there transition. Is transition from one generation to another that opportunity sometimes where sustainability might take a different pathway? Is when you're changing the leadership and figuring out who's going to be the successor and having the whole succession principle, is that when you can quite often see changes in family business?
I think so, because one of the best practices, for instance, when you have to manage a generational transition, is to exploit this change as an opportunity for renovating, for bringing, for innovating, for changing. And I think that, of course, therefore, there are theoretical reasons for that. So a generational transition in general offers the great opportunity and acts as a catalyst of change. So absolutely, I think that also, in order to face the important grand challenge that we are called to face, and of course, I'm talking about the climate crisis, but I'm also talking about the many challenges that we have to, address poverty around the world, the wars and all these kind of things. I think definitely that successions will play an important role, acting as catalysts of change, and also acting as that kind of situational event where you really basically move the power from the senior generation to a next generation that, generational studies reveals to be very much sensitive, as I said, to sustainability topics.
That's absolutely fascinating, but also fascinating to realise that, first generation, second generation, third generation family firms has a distinctive element to it. I was wondering if you could open up the discussion for our listeners about, in your experience, what kind of family firms maybe don't have sustainability on their agenda. So what firms, are not thinking in this general way that we obviously from the Pentland Centre would be keen to see happen?
That's a very good point, because, family firms are heterogeneous indeed. So I think that, for instance, if you compare a business-first family firms to a family-first family firm, which means, the former is a type of family firm where the priority is given to business aspects, and the second is a type of family firm where where family-centered goals are prioritized instead over business-centered ones. Well, if you compare these two cases, which of course are two extreme cases, then you have a lot of intermediate ones. But for sure, what we can say is that the type of sustainability that they make is likely to be different, because often in a business first family firm, if you do sustainability, you do that instrumentally, right? To pursue in the end some sort of economic and financial goals. And we know that you can do that because, one thing is when you do sustainability to comply or to pursue some sort of other goals. And the different thing is when you genuinely do that in order to really contribute to society. So I think there is a big difference in that regard. And probably in the family first, since the family as a social system is a type of system that is very close to anything that has related to to the society, because family by definition is a social system that ideally would like to be there forever, right? It's much more long-term oriented. There is family altruism. You are there to create something that you want to give to your successors that will be hopefully, handed over to the other successors. Years ago, I remember I was doing an interview for a paper that I published in the Journal of Product Innovation Management to a family firm from the German Mittelstand. The German Mittelstand is very well known area, I think, because there are many so-called hidden champions, family firms that are medium-sized, yet are market leader worldwide in a niche. And I remember the words of this senior generation family member who told me, Professor, today, when we make investments in things like sustainability, but any other things, we make investment very often whose payoff will not be benefited, not even by my grandchildren. Probably will be my grandchildren who will start getting some payoffs from the investment that I'm doing now. And I can do so only because we can do so because we are a family business. So I think, and this is an important point, the long-term orientation that typically characterizes a family business is something that, of course, plays an important role when it comes to sustainability. Another aspect that might lead to heterogeneity in the importance attached to sustainability across family firms is also probably the degree of professionalization of these firms. For instance, if you have family firms where in the board of directors you have independent directors, as compared to those where there are only family members, or family firms where you might have institutional investors, or family firms where you might have, a very high percentage of C-level people, human resources that are not belonging to the owning family. Probably all these kind of things will also change the balance in the discussion between economic and non-economic goals. And probably this also, to my best knowledge, there is not a published study specifically on this, but I could speculate and say that this is going to play a role and, and lead to some divergent behavior.
Then the final element that I'd like to draw out here, and it really sort of came to my mind when you were talking about the German family firms that are sort of like have a global reputation in a particular niche. For family firms that have remained quite place-based, and I'm here thinking about place-based because I'm making food from a place or there's a particular craft or skill, is there a different dynamic for those very place-based firms as well?
Yes, I've done some research, for instance, on the localness of family firms. I've published some research. That plays, of course, a very important role, because when you are very much embedded in the local community, when you are, as compared to a family multinational, for instance, right, an extreme case, when you are very much characterized by this strong localness, this, of course, shapes and, let's say, orients sustainability initiatives, sustainability effort toward very local, typically, and community-based kind of efforts. So you will be doing things for your local community. You will be, taking care of what you can achieve there, what kind of contribution you can provide there. And this is probably different from the mindset of a family multinational that instead is by definition as a global reach, also in terms of the kind of impact that they aim to achieve with their sustainability efforts.
I'm wondering, Alfredo, with regards to those firms that maybe struggle a bit more to get the sustainability policies and actions right, is there a factor in them maybe not bringing in people from outside the family? Do firms that bring in external experts to sit on the board, whether it's something like a chief sustainability officer or anything similar, do they tend to do better than the firms that don't bring that external expertise in?
Yes, I think that bringing in external experts can help them to improve their ability, which is their main issue, to embrace sustainability. And of course, this is very difficult. Because when you try to bring in external expert, external professionals within a family firm, oftentimes these efforts do not work because the family is not ready culturally. What I mean is that, in order to bring in successfully external experts within a family business, you must have undergone through some change that make your family business attractive to external experts. And then also, a place where you can retain them. We have many examples of family firms who tried to do so, and then it didn't work because the family had not done that kind of change that the professional would expect, right? If a professional joins a family business and, to bring in his own expertise in the area of sustainability, the professional wants to see that, there are budgets, there are policies, decision making, is really, there are KPIs and all these kind of things. And so I think that's very important. So family firms should have an open attitude towards external experts. And this is a struggle because the literature, the scientific research shows that actually there is a bifurcation bias when you consider family and non-family members. So there is an asymmetric treatment between family and non-family members. And typically, on average, the overall attitude is a closed one toward those who don't belong to the family. But I strongly believe that actually, making effort to bring in this kind of experts is important, is needed, and would help to improve the ability of family firms to embrace sustainability. Yet, I believe that you need to do some preparatory work to make it work in the end. So culturally, you cannot run the family firm as you could do in the first generation, in the first embryonic stage, where everything is very much personalized. There is maybe just one person who makes every decision based on his own or her own emotions and things like this.
Looking on the positive side, have you seen examples then? Have you got examples where these experts have come in and you've seen positive actual results on how they act?
You mean in relation to external experts or?
Yes, in relation to the external experts. I guess also, not just in relation to the external experts, but in relation to that next generation. Have you got practical examples from your work with all these companies you work with of where you've seen, yes, this is what a family business can do?
Absolutely. There are some family firms that I would define absolute champion at, pushing sustainability. One of these, for instance, is a family called Daboca. I recently published a paper on them in the Journal of Product Innovation Management. Daboca is a Italian family firm in the pharmaceutical industry. They make medicines basically out of natural herbs, mostly. And this is a family where really sustainability is at the center of anything they do. And they have been very successful in attracting a pool of, besides the family members, a pool of managers who are really driving sharply, the sustainability agenda. So it's a family that is, I would say, very well known, not just in the pharmaceutical industry, but in general among that range of medium-sized firms as one champion when it comes to sustainability and topics like this.
To pull all of us together then, in your view, how will sustainability in business evolve over the next 3 to 5 years?
Okay, sustainability, that's a very good question and a very, important and difficult question. I think sustainability over the next year will be evolving because there are some contemporary phenomena that are going to make it evolve. One of these phenomena is the phenomenon of aging crisis, right? We all live longer, human beings live longer, and living longer, in my view, means that you will have to take care of our planet, of our world, of our society for a longer time, and that's one thing. A second important point is, of course, AI. There is this technological big bang. This technological big bang is going to influence also the things that we can do with sustainability, because now we can analyze a bunch of data much quicker than before. We can collect evidence data and measure the impact of what we do much easier than before. And this, of course, will probably lead to sustainability efforts that will be more and more focused and more also and more monitored in their actual effects. Another thing is also the geopolitical turmoil that we are living, right? If we think about the current situation, the geopolitical turmoil, I think all these things are also creating in the average human being a sort of sense of fear that, in my view, will ultimately lead to, putting society, the others, the collectivities rather than oneself, at the center. So these are some way. Another way in which I believe sustainability will be changing is because more and more the locus of interest where sustainability discussions, investments, initiatives will take place will be more and more, not just, as I said before, the company, the firm, the organization, but will be also more and more the patrimony of the owners of this organization, which means that these people are becoming more and more cautious, worried, and interested in accumulating something that can produce some goods for society. So investing it for the sake of good, impact investing is an example, but also, doing things that can be helpful for the environment, for society, for the next generation. So I think this would be probably the main macro trends that I would envision in this sphere.
Alfredo, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us such a wonderful guide through the status of family businesses and sustainability.
Thank you very much, Paul and Jen. It was a pleasure interacting with you, and thanks for the nice questions.
I think that was such a good episode, Jan, to complement the one that we did with Alan a little while ago about family firms and sustainability, getting that different perspective, some overlap and agreement, and then some different perspectives as well.
And also the podcast we had with Nick Barter about generational governance really came to the fore in my mind as well, in terms of thinking about the kind of, how the newer generation is involved in the firm and how it might evolve as you go from first to second to third generation firms. I hadn't thought about that. I just always thought, a firm is a firm. But obviously, as you're getting into later generations, the dynamic changes considerably.
And seeing there the key factors that are going to help these family firms, whatever generation they are and whatever size they are, take on the sustainability challenge, and the need for not just a willingness, but ability to have knowledge, to have skills alongside that desire. All of that needs to be there.
And his distinction between business first and family first, I found very persuasive. And this isn't my research area, but I have from time to time in the kind of companies that I work with and research, I've seen these two distinctions play out and how they are very different. So that was really enlightening.
What Alfredo doesn't mention is I think that there's differences in business first as well. It can be business first for the sake of being a successful business, or it can be business first in sake of I just want to make lots of money. So there's different goals, of course, that businesses are going to have, and maybe that is shaped by what generation is there, because he mentions the next Generation Z. He called it Generation Z. You're having Generation Z, and it gets very confusing.
Yeah,
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Yes, Gen Z. Yes, millennials as opposed to baby boomers. I dare say I sit in that middle ground of Gen X, where we're neither one nor the other in terms of the family business discussion, and that might play into what's going to happen as well, and their attitudes towards, is it all about money or is it about sustainability in the planet and other positive impacts that a company can have and get good results from.
I also heard a lovely echo from the podcast series that we did with the Lake District farmers as well, in terms of contemporary farmers maybe not doing what their forefathers and mothers did, but actually going to their grandparents' generation and sort of returning to some of those practices. So yeah, it was I think it embroidered really nicely on several of the episodes that we've had already.
Yeah, and it was good to say, get that other perspective and see how different family businesses, we can't just label them all exactly the same. There are going to be some that are good at sustainability, there's going to be some that are bad, there's going to be some that are trying and failing, some that are trying and succeeding.
Yeah, and I always love interviewing Italians. I could have listened to Alfredo. He could have read the phone book to me and I would have been enchanted and just listening to the lovely cadence and rhythm of how he spoke. It was lovely.
I should let him know the next time I speak to him. Yes.
He can read me the phone book.
If he can record you, reading some kind of bedtime
the
story.
The shipping news.
The shipping forecast. Okay, yeah, that'll do for you, will it? Well, we're not doing the shipping forecast next week, unfortunately, Jan, so we'll have to wait until then. But what we are doing next week is talking about architecture.
Brilliant.
Because architecture has such a big influence on the carbon footprint of buildings, both new builds and historic being renovated, and all other aspects there.
That sounds brilliant. Who's going to talk to us about that?
We're going to be joined by Alfie Stevenson-Boyles, who is an architect. He's an architect with a good history in sustainable architecture and all that embodies, and we'll find out much more about what that does embody.
Brilliant.
Until then, thank you very much for listening. It's goodbye from me, Paul Turner.
And it's goodbye from me, Jan Bevington.